I would like to call the meeting to order, the regular council meeting of September the 9th at 6 o'clock. And I'll call the meeting to order and recognize that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are happy to share the land with them. Are there any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognition anyone wants to mention today? No? Okay. There is an opportunity at all our meetings for public input, and that's what we will move to now on our agenda. And I'll just review the process we have for the public to be involved in our meetings, and we welcome guests, residents of our community who wish to speak. We ask that all statements be respectful of other members of the public and staff and council. We ask that you provide your full name and the community where you reside, so we have that for the record. And if you have a question or a concern that you would like to be addressed, then we ask that you also provide your email address so that we can communicate directly with you with the answer to the question. The chair, that would be me, will respond to questions that can be easily answered. It is at the discretion of the chair to make that determination. If your question or concern cannot be addressed by the chair, then it will be handled as follows. We will email you with an answer to your question or response to your concern. We may also contact you to get any additional information for further clarification if that's necessary. We will provide a summary of answers and responses at a future council meeting under business arising from the minutes. And this will form part of the public record so that those that may be listening, because people do listen to our meetings via the audio recording, and some watch the recording via YouTube. So then the answers become part of the public record and everyone has access to that information. If there are statements that relate to personnel or to our operations, they can be emailed directly to our Chief Administrative Officer, Tom McEwen, who's sitting to my left. We allocate 15 minutes for public input, and if you're interested in providing public input, if you just indicate to me, so we divide the 15 minutes up, so just one I think we have tonight, so if you need the full amount of time, no, thank you. But you're welcome to come forward now to the podium. And we just ask that you introduce yourself. We'll get you to put the mic on so that we have you included in the recording. And your name.
It's on? Okay.
Yeah. So welcome, and the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mayor. Ms. Mayor, council, staff, is there staff here? I have a sign, it would sure help out. No, thank you very much for this evening. My name is Stephen Adamson. I reside in Hebbs Cross. This evening, I'll be offering you a solution to a problem I don't think you fully understand that you have at this moment. 4 years ago, my wife and I chose Nova Scotia to be our forever home, my toe tag home, as I call it. There's going to be a tag on my toe before you take me out of that home. This is where I want to be. I did my training here with the military in Cornwallis and Greenwood. I fell in love with Nova Scotia. I'm from the West Coast originally. My wife is from the UK. Before we moved here, we traveled north and south. We did our research. We ended up here, and we met a fellow by the name of Rick Allen. And he was a great ambassador for Bridgewater, Lunenburg. He's helped us out immensely. We purchased a property here, raw land. We had a plan for a 5-year plan for this property, in that we would build, and I would build and work here for 6 months a year to get the property and the house up. And there was a 5-year plan. It's a labor of love I'm doing here. It's one that takes a lot of effort, a lot of patience, and a lot of planning. So when I was in the offices last week on an unrelated matter, I noticed on the board there's a second reading for the bylaw permit expiry date. And I thought to myself, there's no expiry date on my building permits that I've received from you. What's this all about? So I asked around. Again, staff members were fantastic. They helped me out, they walked me through it, explained to me the reasons why, from the past viewpoint and going forward into the future. I understand it. I don't necessarily agree with it, in that contracts are not a casual written note to from one person to another. They are the final say. I work with contracts, you work with contracts, and I know when I sign a contract for a job, scope of work, payment, time schedules, that's the final say. There's no going back. We've both signed it, we've done it. So when I found out that my building permit was going to need an annual renewal, and that it would expire in 3 years' time, this flew in the face of my wife, my plans, like completely threw us off kilter. So what do? I come and explain to you all what brought me here, why we are here, not just here in this building today, but to Nova Scotia. I came here because of the beauty of the place, the integrity of the people I've always met here, and the opportunities that abound. But opportunities can't abound if we don't stick to the contracts that we sign with each other. So I ask you at this time, and I mean no disrespect, but as individuals, how do you feel about a contract that you signed being taken back by the other party, rewritten, and handed to you without your input, without due consideration of what it's going to entail? So that's my complaint right there in a nutshell. My solution to y'all is this, that permits issued prior to the final reading of this bill, that they be extended for 10 years. They be given a 10-year expiry date. Whether they're already 10 years old or not, they have a new 10 years, because this is the contract. But going forward, all new contracts are worked in with the annual renewal rate, the annual renewal fee, and the 3 years reapplication for your building permit. Now, what does this give you all? This gives you all the ability to say, we stick to our word, to tell your citizens that what you say and how you think about them and what you think about yourselves as far as contracts are concerned. You're standing by them. You stand by your word. And I can't see a greater thing for any council to have than the trust of their own citizens. What does it get for me? It puts me back on my 5-year time plan that I have for this house without the worries of 3 years down the road, an unforeseen, another bylaw comes in, and I can't build my house according to our original plans. I want to live here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adamson. Is there anyone else? Okay. We will move on to the approval of our agenda, and I would ask that we include in the agenda an item to extend the medical leave for Councillor DeLong. It's not in our agenda, but if we can include that in the agenda, I would appreciate that. And could we have a motion to move by Councillor Smith and seconded by Deputy Mayor Vino, to approve the agenda with the addition of the medical leave? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. So we will deal with the issue of the medical leave first, even though it's not on the... We're going to deal with it, right? Okay. We'll deal with it right now. If somebody could propose that motion to extend the medical leave to the end of February 2026. It's been moved by Councillor Smith. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bell. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor indicate by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on then to the approval of the minutes of July 22nd, 2025. Are there any errors or omissions or concerns about the minutes? Seeing none, I declare them approved as circulated. And the minutes of the special council meeting July 29th, are there any errors or omissions there? Corrections? I'll declare the minutes approved as circulated. Business arising from the minutes? None? Okay. awarding of tenders and RFP, the award of tender 2025-01001, snow removal service. Mr. Burgess.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. The municipality of the District of Lunenburg is responsible to maintain the municipally owned public highways during the winter months. This work includes snow clearing and the application of salt and sand for ice control. This work is completed throughout the winter and allows for the safe use of municipal roads by residents. A tender for snow removal services was posted on August 12th and closed August 26th at 2 p.m. One bid was received and accepted by the tender deadline. This accepted bid was from Gearhart Property Improvements for an estimated cost of $72,712. Gearhart's have had this contract in the past and have provided good service well within the municipal standards for snow removal. Sufficient funds have been included in the 25-26 operating budget for this snow and ice removal service. The recommendation is that council authorize staff to award the tender 2025-01-001 snow removal services for municipal public highways to Gearhart Property Improvements Limited, which will provide snow removal services on municipal roads for the next 3 years for an estimated cost of $672,712.
Would someone propose this motion, and then we can have any discussion or questions that might relate to it? Councillor Brooks.
I propose to Mayor McLean-Weil and council, I move that municipal council award tender 2025-01-001 snow removal services for municipal public highways to Gearhart Property Improvements Limited for snow removal services on municipal roads for the next 3 years, ending May 31st, 2028, at an estimated cost of $672,712.90, excluding HST. I so move.
Councillor Bell, seconded. Thank you. Is there discussion or questions? Councillor Brooks.
Just for my own curiosity, can you tell me what the yearly window frame is for that? And just curious how we get to that number in terms of snow days and time that's on. I'm just curious. Maybe you can help me with that.
We, the engineering department, have put, the tender is basically a per service contract. So every time they plow snow, they charge a fee. For each road, it's a different fee. So it is quite complicated tender. So we estimate the number of times we're going to plow a road, the number of times we're going to salt a road, the number of times we sand the road. And with those estimated number of services times the unit rate, that's how we get our estimated costs. So we've been doing this for quite some time now, so our estimated number of services is close. But we like to estimate a little high so that we don't get caught in a bad winter.
Thank you.
And the kilometers, it's 11 point, of municipal roads, 11.3 or 0.4?
Yes.
Something like that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Just for the record, because we do have people who wonder about that.
Yes, okay.
Other questions? Councillor Smith.
I just wonder if you can comment on the fact that there's only one bid?
I thought maybe somebody would ask this question. Because it's only 11 kilometers, it doesn't attract bigger companies that are not local. So we're not getting the Dexter Constructions coming to town looking for this work. And because it's snow removal, you've got to be close at hand with all your employees 24/7. So, and at the same time, because it is 24/7, you have to have somebody or a contractor that's large enough that has extra people, extra machinery for breakdowns. And really, Gearhart's is probably one of the few contractors that has that ability.
Other questions? All those in favor of accepting the tender as presented indicate by raising their hands. Those opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We have no presentations, no correspondence. We'll go to recommendations from committees, and that is the Dangerous and Unsightly Property Committee. Mr. Hopkins.
Good evening. There's just one item from the Dangerous Unsightly Property Committee, and it has to do with the financial assistance for cleanup for the $1,500. We had a request from a property owner, and it was recommended by the committee to send it to council to award the $1,500 once the work has been completed. That's about it.
Is there any questions? Councillor Smith.
I'm wondering about the 30 days, that if the cleanup assistance request for $1,500 is granted, that the cleanup must be completed in 30 days. So would that be 30 days from this meeting? And are there any, is there an ability for the residents to apply for an extension if there are issues, you know, for example, getting a dumpster or, you know, things do come up and, I just wanted to know if there's any flexibility on that.
We'd be reasonable about it. We don't want to continue on for, 6 months down the road either, so we would like to get the property cleaned up as soon as we can. But if there's situations where we need to give an extension for good reasons, then absolutely we could do that.
Anything else? Would someone propose the motion then, please? Councillor Smith.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Dangerous and Unsightly Property Committee and approve the cleanup assistance application for the property located at 1735 Newburn Road, Barse Corner, in the amount of $1,500 as per policy 074 Unsightly Premises Cleanup Assistance Program. I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Moore. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, motion is carried. And I think this is the first application we've had under the new policy that we've brought in.
It is, yes.
So just for the record, people who have unsightly and dangerous property can apply to be part of this program where they can be reimbursed for up to $1,500 for the cost of the cleanup. And this is new, a new program we have brought in. Thank you. We'll move on to staff reports, planning and development. Mr. Merrill.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the recommendation in the staff report is that Council appoint the following staff as development officers for the municipality of the District of Lunenburg: Ella Gindy and Rosemary Young. The development officers are required to be appointed by Council as per the Municipal Government Act, and the development officer is the one that interprets your land use bylaws and administers your subdivision bylaw. Previously, we had two staff that have since departed from the municipality, creating the need to appoint additional development officers. There's no additional Cost, this is in their job descriptions already, so this is just, we need the official appointment so they're able to sign off on the planning work.
Would someone make the motion? Councillor Hubley?
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council appoint Ella Gindy and Rosemary Young as development officers for the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Deputy Mayor Vino. I just have one quick question. What additional training is required to elevate them to and recognize them as development officers?
Yeah, so there's no official training in the province of Nova Scotia. However, as an employer, it's in our best interest to make sure that our staff are trained. So our manager of development is responsible for training our staff and making sure that staff have a consistent approach, which is important when you have multiple people doing interpretation type work. So, yeah, even though they get appointed today, they probably won't be signing development permits and signing off on subdivision applications tomorrow, but they won't be signing it until our manager of development is comfortable that with them signing it. So.
We have it moved and seconded. Is there any further questions? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We will move on to 11.1.2, which is second reading, which is the repeal and replace bylaw 018 of the building code. Mr. Hopkins.
At the July 22nd council meeting, council approved the proposed amendments to the building code bylaw and conducted first reading. Notices were posted on Modal's website, the Facebook page, and electronic board in the lobby with the intention to repeal and replace bylaw 18 building code bylaw at the September 9th council meeting. If the second reading is conducted, the bylaw will remove Schedule A fees from the bylaw, add the location certificate requirements, and add a new section regarding expiry of permits. A notice will be published in the local paper, and the bylaw will become effective the date of the publication.
Okay, I think this is what Mr. Stevenson was speaking to earlier in the meeting. Or Adamson, I'm sorry. Just kidding. First name and the last name. Sorry, Mr. Adamson. Is there questions? Councillor Moore, and then I think Councillor Weichel.
Thank you. I do have communication about the location certificates, if I may read it, because it's to be presented to this council. I'm writing about the proposed, not me, I'm not naming any names. I'm writing about, is it okay if I do this? Okay, yeah. About the proposed building code bylaw 018, specifically the new rule requiring surveys and location certificates for new structures or additions that change the building envelope. I get why this is being added. It's important to make sure setbacks and coverage rules are followed to avoid issues that, like boundary disputes. That makes sense for protecting property owners in the municipality. My concern is that requiring a survey every time could add several thousands of dollars in cost and slow down projects, especially on the large rural properties common in our municipality, where setbacks aren't usually a problem. Most lots in the municipality are big enough for that. It's often obvious the setback is met by a wide margin. Could the bylaw not be tweaked to only require surveys when it's not clear that the setback is met by a good amount? Like, say, double the required setback, example 20 meters for a 10-meter setback. Tools like GIS, maps, parcel data, and even on-site measurements with clear landmarks could show this easily in any cases. The bylaw reading gives the building code official some discretion for additions or accessory buildings, so maybe that could be expanded here. And I will just leave it at that. I just wanted to bring that forward. It was sent to me, and I understand that Surveys are a lot more expensive than location certificates, but it is still a cost if they have to keep doing it over and over. So I don't know how this council feels about amending that part of it. I'll just leave it at that for now, if people want to have anything to say.
Councillor Oikel.
Well, it sounds like it needs to be looked at, for sure, as well as, if we recall, I had first not been very supportive of the 1-year mark, and then in talking to some people, they thought that it was already at 1 year for their certificate, and so then I changed my mind. But now I'm back again, thinking about, because of the gentleman that came in, for people who already presently have permits, that if we're just going to cut them off right away when they, as he said, was expecting it to last a certain length of time, a reasonable length of time. So I'm just wondering that perhaps we need to relook at this, maybe look at and find out more about what is happening in our municipality with people who are building, both regarding the surveys and with permits.
Mr. Hopkins, do you want to speak to this response? Because we are at second reading, so
Sure.
there's quite a bit of background
Sure.
been put out on this. so.
There's a couple items. The one about location certificates, yes, they're not a full survey, it's a location certificate. We would not do them on additions or accessory buildings. It would be for new structures. And although the lots in the municipality are often bigger than you would find in like a smaller town, we've been running into quite a few problems with people assuming that they know where their property line is and it actually not being where their property line is, and which does cause other issues. We've had a few come up recently. And like we discussed before, the banks a lot of times are asking for them anyway. So, but we're not getting the information on them because they're being sent to the bank and not sending us copies of them. So that's part of it. As far as the expiry of building permits, the Building Code Act has always had the provision for the inspector or the authority having jurisdiction, which is the inspector, to cancel a permit after 1 year with no work started or very little work. So even if the bylaw does not have that in it, that doesn't stop us from canceling the building permit.
What would precipitate cancellation?
Typically no work starting, so it can cause a lot of issues. The building code changes every 5 years. So if you have a building permit that's open for 5 years, 10 years, not started, and there's been significant change to the building code, then the person who applied is under the old rules and not the new rules. Also, if it's a zoned area, a development permit automatically expires after 1 year if the work is not started. So there's other rules in place that may expire the permit anyway, even if the bylaw doesn't include it.
Deputy Mayor Vino.
Thank you. And Mr. Hopkins, you actually answered some of my questions with regards to the location certificate, not needing one for an accessory building. So that helped clarify that. Going back to the expiry of a building permit, if a resident had taken one out a year ago and all they've done is their footing foundation, does that mean that they would not qualify then to have their building permit expire because they have done something? Like, I want to be firm in knowing before voting on this tonight, what classifies work? Is work spending a month putting up, framing something? Or what do you classify as work that will not make that permit expire?
So moving forward, as long as there's progress being made on it, then we'll give expiries or give renewals. So if at some points we get to the 3-year mark, then it doesn't mean they can't continue on with the work. All we ask is at that point, you reapply. So say you only need, I'm not sure, you're 3/4 through the permit, and you still need a permit for the work that's left to be done, then the permit value is on only the remaining work that has to be done. So it's not that what's been done so far is no good. It's fine to that point, but then moving forward, we don't want to keep these permits open for forever. It's, especially with new zoning that's coming through, it causes a lot of issues with coastal protection or zoning requirements, things like that. So we want to try to get these projects started and finished. We don't want to keep them open forever.
Can I ask one supplementary? I'm still struggling, I think, with the concept of not using the term grandfathering old permits, whether we've done cluster developments or coastal development or land use development. We've always said anything that's done now is fine to proceed, but we're not doing that for the building permit side of it. So I was wondering if Tom could speak to where we're at the stage that we're at with second reading, if we wanted to make changes, how that would look.
Thank you for the question. I think the first part to point out is that non-conforming uses or grandfathering clauses are specifically addressed in the MGA under the planning section. So there is guidance on what those are and how we deal with them. So you often hear in the planning, particularly where you're looking at zoning, if it's already there, it's considered a non-conforming use. It's a recognition of the fact that we can't, for planning purposes, we can't make something illegal today, which was legal yesterday. The legal maxim is nunc pro tunc, and only the federal government has the ability to do that, as demonstrated by the War Measures Act. So there's I'm glad JC is in the back, so he can be astounded by my legal knowledge. And so under the building permit, it's council has the ability, because the Building Code Act sets out all of the provisions of the act. And as Graham has pointed out, there's section 9, I believe, of that act, subsection 3, which permits the building official, who is the authority having jurisdiction, to revoke a building permit under certain conditions. And 3 and 4 are if work is not started, and I think 4 is if work isn't completed. So that discretion exists in the legislation. Our policy is to further define that act, specifically as it's directed by council and how we would work forward. So council certainly has the ability to put whatever time limit it wants. Historically, we didn't have a time limit. And as Graham pointed out, as we're moving forward with MLDL 2040 and municipal-wide zoning, if the building permit lasts longer than a year and the development permit doesn't, we could have residents that get into the situation where, quite unbeknownst to them, their development permit's expired, so they can't do a development, but they have the building permit, which looks valid, because it hasn't expired, and then they're building without a development permit. And that becomes a problem for us. So there's a lot of utility in having the timelines match up so that the public doesn't inadvertently put themselves in a position where they have an expired development permit and a valid building permit and think that that's okay to move forward with when it could be problematic.
Anything else? You need a moment. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Oikle.
Just thank you for saying that, and I definitely agree going forward. I like the year and the year. I'm just looking at past permits that are in the queue, and that was the reason for my question.
Councillor Oikle.
Thank you. So I understand it regarding development permits. However, if I was just to go and build a house, I would get a building permit. I don't need a development permit to build my house, do I? Just my house? Oh, if I'm in a zoned area. Okay, all right. Okay, so basically everybody who builds houses now need to have development. Once we are zoned, once we have finished zoning, we'll need a developmental permit plus a building permit both of them. Okay. And so anyone in the past, though, has not had either, has had only the building permit, right? Not the other one, right? So I'm still with Chastity, on Deputy Mayor Vino, sorry, on the fact people who are right now trying to build their homes and are in the middle of it, or whatever they're building, and maybe in 2 months, because they had a building permit, it's going to run out. But they're still in the middle of doing everything. And they'll have to renew and pay again, right? I know that it's not a lot of money, but I do have, a little bit of a challenge with that.
There was a question about permit versus whether that's a contract. If you want, can you address that?
Yeah, so a building permit is a statutory function performed by the municipality through the authority having jurisdiction, which are the building officials. So it's much more than a contract. It is the obligation of the municipality to ensure that things are constructed as per the building code. And we do that through inspection and the application of the code. So it's a function that operates at the legislative level, and then it's administered through the authorities having jurisdiction, and the Act gives them discretion on a whole host of things, including whether to revoke permits or not. So if a permit is issued by mistake, it can be revoked. If it's issued and it's not started, it can be revoked. If it's issued and it's abandoned, it can be revoked. And that decision by the building official is not subject to review by council. That's a discretion of the building official. There is a notice requirement that they have to provide to the landowner, but under the legislation, that's the limit. So, and we don't have the ability to alter the building code, so we can't amend it as you would a contract.
Are there other questions? Councillor Smith.
So how often would someone's permit be revoked because there's no activity? Like, how regular an occurrence is that at the moment?
That's a good question. I can't give you exact numbers, but in the last 2 years, it's becoming more common, especially when it's surrounding coastal protection requirements, where a permit may have been issued before the change came in place and no work has started on the project, and now that project wouldn't meet the requirements of the coastal protection. The other thing I'll add too is when a development permit expires and it was required to be there, then the building permit really isn't valid either. So we're really supposed to revoke our permit if there's not a valid development permit in place as well. So we need both. We can't issue a building permit without a development permit when it's a zoned area, and when it expires, then we're supposed to really be expiring ours too, revoking ours, since there's no development in place. So.
Are there further questions? Councillor Moore.
Thank you for your explanation on the location certificate and it's only in surveys only being needed if it's new structures, correct? Okay, that kind of satisfies why it was done, and I'll just leave it at that for now.
I'll add, if it's a particular, if we believe it's so close to a property line already,
Right.
then we can, we have the ability to ask for it now, and we do periodically.
Yeah.
But that would not be a norm.
Okay.
We're basically looking at someone building a new house.
Yeah.
A new commercial building, something
Right.
like that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Moore.
To Mayor McLean-Wall and members of council, I move that municipal council repeal and replace bylaw 018, building code bylaw as presented.
Is there a seconder for the motion? seconded by Counselor Burns. Further discussion, I'm seeing a lot of hesitancy around the table. Deputy Mayor Vino.
Just reiterating, I'm still struggling with, I realize going forward, this makes sense. You have a development permit that expires after a year, it makes sense to have the building permit. It's just the people that are in behind that weren't aware of this, and we're placing this new bylaw and how that's going to roll out. That's the part I'm struggling with, not going forward, just with what's already been applied for and what's already been approved. And that's where I'm sitting right now, because if I vote against this, it's not that I don't agree with the future, it's that I'm struggling with the past. That's where I'm at.
So I'm just going to ask our deputy CAO to speak to the process, because this has already been through public hearing. It's been through first reading, am I correct? And we're at second reading, so normally what would happen after the vote tonight, it would be in place. And if there's hesitancy around the table, and I'm seeing a number of people that are kind of not sure, maybe you can explain where we're at with the process and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, I can try. Probably several other folks more qualified to speak to that, but you're correct that you've conducted first reading and you've done the appropriate advertisements to pass the bylaw. So you're currently at second reading. If you're going to make substantive amendments, I believe your clerk would advise you that you would then have to go back and do first reading again. And I believe her interpretation is that deciding that existing permits wouldn't have a time frame applied to them would be a substantive amendment.
Councillor Brooks.
Do we have any idea how many permits this might mean at this time? Like, what are we talking about? Are we talking dozens or hundreds that are currently in play that might be revoked? Do we have a number of any sort?
That's another great question. We did, what was it, 2023, we sent out for all these open permits that we had, or a lot of them, we sent out over 2,000 letters, and I think we sent out letters in the past too and really didn't get a response. Well, we did get a response when we sent the 2,500 out. They all showed up at the door and they weren't very happy with us. But in the letter, it was old files that were open for a long period of time, and we gave them notice that these files were being closed. But yeah, there was 2,500 at that point in time, so I'm not sure. Could be a few more than that. We did close a bunch at that time, and actually it worked out quite well. We did get people to finish their jobs, and we did close a lot of files during that. But most people did get a letter warning them that the files were being closed for inactivity.
Councillor Smith.
I just want to return to an earlier point about the development permit and the building permit. So if someone could reiterate this, when our zoning comes in, people are not going to be able to use their building permits in perpetuity anyway. Can you explain that to me again? Like, what happens to people's building permits once the need for a development permit also comes in? Have I understood that correctly?
So I think the question is, if you have you're an unzoned area and we zone you, and you have an open building permit, what happens? And I think part of the analysis has to involve what you've done so far with your building permit. If it's 10 years old and you've done nothing, it's very likely that the official having jurisdiction, the building inspector, could revoke it. If you're 95% through, it's unlikely it will be revoked, or it will be revoked and extended. So you have to have a certain level of confidence in the building official that's going to act reasonably. And then for the development permit, if it was renewed, I suspect you'd be issued a development permit as well. So the Building Code Act says that municipalities may introduce bylaws that set expiration dates or expirations for permits for both, for construction. So it is within the authority of the municipality to set that. It's not prescriptive, though, that it's 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. But because the development permit, at least on a go-forward basis, because the development permit and the building permit are so intertwined, it makes little sense to cause one to expire, not the other. I think what council's having challenge with is building permits that are open, and whether they should be subject to a set expiration, or the alternative is you leave the building official with the discretion to revoke them, relying upon section 9, 3, or 4 of the building code. It's not cleaner, but it is an option. So I think that's where council is having a bit of a challenge. I think generally around the table it's accepted that on a go-forward basis, new permits expire in a year. But what do we do with the outstanding permits? We did tackle this. Council may recall when they introduced the Coastal Protection Act, it had a provision in it that said if you have an open building permit, you're not subject to the act. And that was a problem because we had thousands of open building permits, a lot along the coast. And if we did nothing and that act was proclaimed and the regulations, we weren't able to regulate or enforce on those properties. So we wrote, I don't remember being 3,000, but I know there's a lot, in an effort to clean up the files. We also now have a more active and accurate database for building officials, and we're doing the portal to move it in to make it more easily adaptable, and we can see what's happening. So I would suggest if council's not comfortable today passing second reading as is, we refer it back to policy and strategy for another discussion. Because if you decide today that you're going to change the draft bylaw to exempt open permits, that's a substantial change and we're back to first reading. And if we go to policy and strategy and make that same decision, we're back to first reading too.
I'm going to go to Councillor Bell, where everybody thinks about this.
Thank you. What I find strange about this process is that municipal-wide planning was encouraged by the province. When I use the word encouraged, I'm being polite. This is somewhat cumbersome, but I do understand this process and where we are here today. What I'm concerned about is it could be defeated today, which puts us right back to stage one. If we have consideration to look at some areas, it's got to go back to another committee, and then it still starts over. But to me, it would be politer to the public to have the discussion rather than defeat it, and then we would appear that we weren't doing our homework. Now, I have heard several times that the province is concerned that the municipal process is slow and that zoning has slowed down some low-cost housing options that were being looked at in other municipal jurisdictions because of zoning and because municipalities were dragging their feet to maybe approve a permit where there was federal and provincial money available. I would want to avoid these type of situations if there is a danger in doing that. I would like to feel confident that we have had the full discussion, everybody feels comfortable, moving to this next level. When I look at the facial expressions of my peers here, I don't get that. So I question myself, did I not ask enough questions earlier? Or did someone else not ask questions? Let's not point the finger. Let's have the discussion over. If I'm out of line on this, you have to tell me. But I would rather not vote against it. I would rather have continued discussion. That's where I stand. Thank you.
Your read of the room is very good, Councillor Bell, because that's exactly how I read it. I think Deputy Mayor Vino is next, and maybe you're going to propose something.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Similar to Councillor Bell's point, I didn't speak to, in the hopes that we would defeat this motion, because I do think there's good things that will come out of these changes. It's just the going backwards, and we can decide here today what we want to do. We don't have to rush this. So whatever motion or amendment is needed to go back and look at what was mentioned earlier with the permits that are already in the queue, I would be happy to put forward, but whether that's a motion or direction or a change, I'm not sure which you need. Or amendment. And I'm glad you're not either, because then
I'm just getting
Yeah.
a little parliamentary
Absolutely.
counseling here,
We'll
because
let you
we have a
discuss that.
motion on the
Yeah.
floor. I think the read of the room is that we should refer it to policy and strategy and have a discussion there, because that's where we can get into more of the meat of the discussion. And then it will come back through another process. So we're just, they're looking it up. So we'll just take a pause for a minute while we find out what the proper procedure is here. My legal advice says that we can have a motion to refer it, even though there is a motion on the floor.
Because you're referring for the pending primary motion.
Okay.
Referring a motion to the committee.
Yeah.
Policy and strategy.
Deputy Mayor, would you like to make that? We have a lovely blue page to follow.
Cheat sheet.
Yeah. If you would just elaborate on what you came up with by following that blue sheet there, I'd like to know what I'm proposing before I say it.
So we have a motion on the floor, but according to our constitutional guidelines here, our guidelines on parliamentary procedure, we can propose a motion to refer it to a committee, even though there is a motion on the floor.
Perfect.
And I
yeah.
think the proper place for the discussion is at policy and
Yes.
strategy, which I think that's what Councillor Bell was getting at as well.
Yes, I would like to propose that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bell. Any discussion on the motion of referral? All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Councillor Burns is opposed. Motion is carried.
If I could just offer some clarity so that the staff know what they're bringing back. There was initially some discussion around location certificates and some other elements, but those appear to have been resolved to the satisfaction of council. And so the only outstanding item was a discussion around what should be done about open permits currently existing. So some more information about the number that are there and different approaches that could be taken either under the proposed bylaw using the discretion or under an amendment to the bylaw to permit them to continue.
Councillor Bell.
At this point, am I allowed to comment on the process?
You can speak to the motion to refer it to policy and strategy.
Okay, well, this would be on what would be discussed when it got there. I think there's two types, in my mind, two types of building permits. It's those that are sitting on someone's shelf for a couple of years and nothing has been done. My opinion, withdraw them, scrap them. But another type of building permit is people who are working on their ability to pay, to stay away from a mortgage, or based on timelines of how much time they can put in. So to me, if something is started, I'd like to honor that as a contract. But if someone grabbed a permit because they thought something was going to change and they have no intentions of doing the work. I have no problem drawing that back. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that as direction to the staff, for discussion. So, is it to the motion, Councillor Reinhardt? Okay.
It's a question about it, what it would mean if we made a change to the policy. So I would want to know more about if we were to bring in a change to exempt current permits. Hypothetically speaking, could that open up maybe a rush or increase in new open permits to kind of to keep them in before a change? Is that a possible consequence?
I think once the first reading happens, then we can't let the loophole work. Yeah, so that would stop that, wouldn't it?
This is the discussion we'll have at Policy and Strategy.
Yeah.
Okay? I think you've got the elements of concern that you'll have to be prepared to discuss with, when we have it come back at Policy and Strategy. Okay? Okay. Let us move on then to... We did. Okay, we're going to move on to 11.2, which is Recreation, Parks and Tourism, 11.2.1, which is Cape LaHave Easement Agreement. Ms. Payne.
Okay, yep, I do see it there. Yep. Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to speak tonight concerning a proposed conservation easement for Cape LaHave Island between the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. For councillors, this is probably not the first time you've heard some conversation around this proposed easement with the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. In fact, probably the first time councillors would have heard it would have been in November 2019. That was brought to council after a few discussions between staff and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. They expressed interest in conserving the island, its ecological significance. I believe it is the largest or the second largest untouched island in Nova Scotia. At that meeting in November, staff were directed to draft a conservation easement and bring it back to council, but it was very much stressed after public consultation. So after that direction of council in November of 2019, staff took on the task of doing a public consultation. And this was done in 2020. And you'll note on my PowerPoint that it says virtual. For those of you who may recall, what we were living in 2020 was the pandemic. So we were very limited or could not even conduct face-to-face or public meetings. So primarily it was done virtually. There was an online survey that members of the public were asked to participate in. And I understand at the time that staff had a number of phone conversations with some key stakeholders, and public members also sent in their own comments through mail or through email. So moving forward to November the 9th, 2023, in between that period of 2020 and 2023, we had received advice from our legal counsel that in order for the municipality to enter into a conservation easement with the Nova Scotia Nature Trust, that the Lunenburg Common Lands Act needed to be amended. I won't go through all of the history of the Lunenburg Common Lands Act, but at one point in time, the municipality did have the authority to sell, lease, or rent part of Cape LaHave Island. I believe it was in the 80s. there was another amendment done to the Lunenburg Common Lands Act that changed that to say that we couldn't sell, rent, or lease. And because of that change in the amendment, even though an easement agreement is not exchanging cash, it's still giving up some of the rights to the land. And so it was highly recommended by our legal counsel to seek an amendment to the Lunenburg Common Lands Act, which we did. We went through the process. Council gave direction to do that. We needed to have somebody to take this amendment to the House, and MLA Becky Druin took that to the House, and the Lunenburg Common Lands Act received that amendment on November the 9th, 2023, which essentially provided the municipality with the authority to enter into a conservation easement. So then, after that amendment, we were given further direction to have public consultation, and this was done in May of 2024. And I'll back up a little bit. In our public consultation in 2020, there were some key points that came from that. And one of the points that the public asked for was further consultation. They felt that the virtual consultation wasn't enough. They want it in person. So hence the public consultation in May of 2024, in which we posed 4 questions that night in the room and got feedback, and also posted those 4 questions on our Engage website. And from that feedback in May and online, we compiled a What We Heard report, which I believe was attached to my staff report and the agenda package. At that May 2024 public consultation in person, we had a number of questions posed by the public. There was 9 in total. We responded to those questions, and that was what helped form the What We Heard report. So we brought that back to Council. And then Council further directed that we have a public information session to bring back what we heard and to provide the answers to those 9 questions. And that was held just recently in June 2025. So that gives you a little bit of background and to point out the number of times that we did consult with the public on this matter. So I'm not going to go into great detail because it was in my staff report, which I know that you all read from cover to cover. But for the public's purpose, for anybody listening, in essence, a conservation easement is a legal written agreement between the landowner, which in this case is the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, and the holder of the easement, which would be the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. And it's created to protect some or all of the property's conservation values. And the owner gives the land trust access to the land to monitor and enforce the conditions established in the conservation easement. So the conservation, or the proposed conservation easement, was also attached. So that really lays out how this partnership is going to work, how we're going to make decisions, if things aren't upheld, what happens, and all those things. But in that, there's also Section D, I think Schedule D it's called, and it outlines the permitted and restricted uses in that easement agreement. And that's where I'm going to focus most of my presentation tonight. So the proposed permitted and prohibited uses that I'm going to present, really the intent of these in the easement agreement is to ensure the protection and perpetuity of Cape LaHave Island, and I can't stress that enough. And really, what is being proposed in that conservation easement for permitted and prohibited uses really comes from that public consultation and the feedback that we heard from the public. Can we say that every permitted use and every prohibited use was 100% supported by everybody? No, but the majority of people had stated these are what they would like to see for permitted and prohibited uses. So the recommended permitted uses in the proposed easement agreement is to continue with the low-impact wilderness camping at camping sites that are already established. The Nova Scotia Nature Trust has done some baseline data, and they have these campsites well mapped on a map. Low-impact, non-motorized outdoor recreation activities, such as berry picking, hiking, snowshoeing, etc. And I think it's more detailed in the easement agreement, but I want to give some examples. We heard loud and clear that hunting and trapping was something that people still continue to do on the island, and that we are recommending as a permitted use, providing they follow the provincial rules and regulations. The maintenance, replacement, or removal of existing permanent structures. So there are some outhouses that have been put on the island and are used. And so in the permitted uses, we're suggesting that they can be maintained, or if it needs to be replaced, it can be replaced. Or if if we need to completely remove it, we can. And with permission, new trails or permanent structures could be put on the island, but that would have to be in agreement between the Municipality District of Lunenburg and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. So continuing on with those recommended permitted uses is the placement of reasonable number of non-illuminated signs. So it might indicate a trail, or it might, I'm trying to think of some sign like no, a trail being built or something of that nature. There'd be a sign that would indicate. But we're not like promoting that there'd be lots of wayfinding signs or lots of signs, just the signs that would be necessary to provide people information. The restoration and remediation necessary for the prevention and treatment of insect or disease infestation. As council is aware, we're dealing with the woolly adelgid in some of our parks. So one of those permitted uses would be to allow for the prevention and treatment of such disease infestation. Minor incidental cutting, pruning, and removal of trees or other vegetation that pose a safety hazard or are essential to undertake the permitted uses. So for example, on some of those established campsites, you might have to, if it's getting a little bit difficult to put your tent there, you can do some minor incidental cutting, pruning, or removal. So those would be the permitted uses that are being recommended, and these were things that we heard from the public, and we thought about all the consequences of enabling those activities to take place. So now I'll go to the recommended prohibited uses. So any commercial, energy, industrial or quarry activity, any mining, exploration, or extraction activity. We're not recommending the subdivision, division, or partition of the property. The operation of motorized vehicles, but with the exception for stewardship or restoration tasks or human health and safety emergencies if we had to get somebody off the island. Storage, discharge, or dumping of non-organic materials or dangerous materials. These might sound like they should be ones that are not prohibited, but we want to be very explicit. Construction of roads or trails or new construction, except as outlined in the permitted uses. Diking, draining, filling, dredging, or any alteration of ponds and water courses. Farming or agriculture, including but not limited to the grazing of animals and the planting of gardens. And the introduction of non-native animals. Applying chemicals except where deemed critical to protect the conservation values, and the alteration of the surface of the lands except as where or when permitted, and the alteration, removal, cutting, or destruction of any trees, shrubs, or vegetation except in circumstances that were listed in the permitted uses, such as those campsites that I talked about earlier. And any use of activity that causes or is likely to cause significant pollution or of any surface water on or about the property, or granting of an easement or right of way other than this agreement. So those listed the prohibited uses. We're trying to make sure, and those align with the conservation values we feel of the island. So I know this is a very quick summary, and I had a lot more in my staff report. I'm certainly open to any questions. And I'll just reiterate that this has been on the Council's agenda since November of 2019. There has been extensive public consultation. There's been a lot of work between the municipality and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. Both solicitors have reviewed the proposed conservation easement that's before you for your consideration. We've went back and made tweaks based on the consultation to try to make some of the language more clear. And so the recommended motion this evening is that Council approve the conservation easement agreement pertaining to the Cape LaHave Island as presented between the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust on the condition that both MODL's solicitor and staff agree with the baseline documentation report as defined in Article 5.3 of the conservation easement and further authorize the mayor and the municipal clerk to sign the agreement. So I will speak a little bit to the baseline documentation report. Nova Scotia Nature Trust, along with a number of other experts, have went out and cataloged, I guess for lack of a better word, all of the things of ecological significance, the risk to that, and they have put, they've cataloged where the campsites are. They have done extensive mapping. We just received that baseline documentation report at the end of August. I did just finally finish reading it today, but we put that in the motion just in case there was something in the baseline data. It wouldn't prevent us from signing it if staff and the solicitor was in agreement with that baseline documentation. We can proceed. So I just want to explain that piece before there was any questions around it. So, yeah, so thank you. And if there's any questions, we do have 2 members of the Nova Scotia Nature Trust with us here this evening, Jamie and Megan. And they're more than willing to answer any questions if council has any for them as well.
We have a number of councillors who wish to speak. Councillor Bell to start with, and then Oikel, Smith, and Reinhardt.
Thank you. I worked and heard a lot of comments. I worked with the former councillor Lisa Haysom, which this was a dear project to her. And at that time, my district did extend down to that area. So I had a lot of discussions with people in West Dublin, in Dublin Shore, even La Have. And the comments that I heard is that they were glad to see that we were taking these steps, and they appreciated the amount of work that had gone into this. Now, that doesn't say 100% of the comments were favorable. I really only ran into 2 individuals that didn't like the process, but I have a feeling they didn't like a lot of stuff in life. So I'm going to certainly support this because I know how much work has gone into this, and I've gone to the 2 public participation, and I also had conversations with those who did the virtual where they would ask me, well, what do I think? I didn't tell them what I thought. I told them what was being expected. They made their own decisions, but I'm sure that after the discussion, I felt confident that they supported it. So I just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. I'm so glad that we're here. This is wonderful. And I do echo what Councillor Bell said, that all the meetings that I went to, all the things that were mentioned that people would like to do and not liked on the island are there. My only concern and question is that normally conserved islands or properties that have conservation, there's never allowed anything. So how are we going to police it? To make sure that nothing, animals don't get on there, or people aren't taking wood off of it like they used to do? You know, like what is the plan for that?
That is a good question. With the prohibited uses, we will have to, we'll, number one, rely on folks. Usually folks will tell us when things are being breached. This was asked particularly about the animals that are currently on the island. My response to that would be I would reach out to the individuals that are suspected of not following what's in the conservation easement. I would have a conversation with them, let them know what is permitted and what's not allowed. And then I would seek advice from my CAO around what kind of legal actions or what actions we could take. I guess it'd be no different than some of the rules and regulations that we have currently in our parks. We would have to do the best that we could with the resources that we had, and if we have to seek other resources to help us, we would need to do that. So I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, but that's, I suspect there will be areas that we will have to look to enforce it, and I'll be looking for support from the folks around the room.
just supplemental. That's exactly what I assumed, but I thought that is important for the public and anyone that is listening or reading to hear that. Thank you.
Counselor Smith.
I think I may have asked this before, so I'm just wondering if you can tell me, in terms of Indigenous consultation, like there was a lot of public consultation that went into this, but I think we recognize that specifically, like when we affect land use rights with something like this, that it's important also to talk to Mi'kmaq rights holders. So I wonder if there was some outreach in that capacity, and maybe is Nature Trust kind of entrusted to work towards that? I'm actually just going to take that, dial that back for a second. I just, like, when we put forward an easement like this, it does seem like we should have some consultation done. Was that done?
So to say that we specifically reached out, no, and I did have this conversation with Jamie, who might be able to answer this question better than me, but the Nova Scotia Nature Trust has had consultation with other areas surrounding the island. Am I correct in saying that, Jamie? But I would say that we haven't specifically reached out and had like a stakeholder interview or anything like that, unless it was done in 2020 when I wasn't here. So, but I know that Jamie had said that they had consulted with the Indigenous community around properties that are very near.
Counselor Reinhardt.
Thanks. And I really appreciate all the work that has gone into this since 2019, which I wasn't here for, but how lucky am I that I get to be here for the the finale and get to celebrate that. I just have a couple small questions about the language in the agreement.
Sure.
One, I have two questions. Can I ask them both? Okay. Because one is about the camping sites, because there are other places that people have camped traditionally. So if you could speak to, say, the benefit of having 5 specific campsites as opposed to allowing just free range camping, if you could talk about that. That would be great.
I might need assistance of the Nature Trust. My understanding is when they went and did the baseline data, this is where the evidence of the majority of the campsites were. So these areas would already be disturbed. Is that a good word? I don't know. Yeah. And so as opposed to having enabling to allow camping to happen across, it could have major impact to some of that significant ecological flora and fauna that's there, whereas the impact has already happened to some degree at these sites. But if council allows Jamie to speak, she could probably speak more eloquently to that.
That's okay with us,
Okay.
I think. Yep.
Thank you. I'm Jamie Morozoff. I'm the Director of Conservation with the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. And thanks for the question, Councillor Reinhardt. I guess to clarify, we have identified that kind of the wilderness style leave no trace camping has been a historic activity that's happened on the island, and we actually within the easement do permit that to occur. So if there are people who are camping on the beach, again, using those principles of leave no trace, that's still allowed for people to be out on the island. Where we had designated the 5 main camping sites, this is where we recognize that there's areas where people are going very regularly. They're cutting down, maybe trimming the grass back. There's little camp tables if you've been out there. There's boobies hanging on the trees. It's places where people and community have gathered. And we want to make sure that that activity can continue in the same way that it has been. So that's why we differentiated in the easement around, the 5 main designated camping sites, but also the recognition that wilderness-style leave no trace camping will continue to happen throughout the island.
I knew she could answer it better than I could.
Other questions?
Yeah,
Yes,
and
yeah.
the other question is fairly specific, but it has to do with the commercial use being prohibited. But there is a condition for use of the property as a waypoint or short-term stopping location. And I just wanted to confirm that that short-term would include an overnight or two, leave no trace camping, because I know that there are some kayak tours that do that.
Yes.
Other questions?
You might as well stay up here just in case.
Counselor Smith?
I just wanted to know if I could ask Nature Trust to respond to the question around consultation with Mi'kmaq on this area. I think I would feel like I'm very excited about this project, very, excited to see the work kind of come to fruition. And I would have liked to have seen some outreach to Mi'kmaq community or conservation organizations. I guess where I would feel more comfortable is if you could tell me, like I have seen the on your website, your commitments, your reconciliation strategies. So would you say that in the development of this easement, that learning from working with Mi'kmaq and Indigenous organizations around conservation, that some of that learning has been brought to bear on this agreement?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. It's a really important one. And so as you mentioned, the Nature Trust as an organization we're on a learning journey ourselves, trying to do better and be better and incorporate Indigenous knowledge and reconciliation into our practices. We are a really active partner with various Mi'kmaq organizations and communities across the province, whether it's working with Earth Keepers to get on the ground. We work really closely with helping with Cespedes Dominage Gnicknu, the Mi'kmaq Land Trust. And, we have key projects, as Trudy mentioned, where we kind of sit at a table with Indigenous right holders, and we're in that phase of building relationships and trying to do better. So while we haven't had a, big C duty to consultation on Cape Lahave Island, we have been, as I said, working, even in our internal land use policies and, the language that we use internally in our documents and kind of working to build those relationships. We've also identified in the baseline report, which Trudy mentioned, identification that we haven't found specific cultural resources on the island yet, but there is a plan in place that if we were to find a shell midden or potential burial site, knowing the history of islands being burial sites for important Mi'kmaq community members, that's a part of our stewardship plans and how we work, again, across the province with different communities and Mi'kmaq organizations.
If I might just ask a question regarding the volunteers that support the work of the Nature Trust, and it comes to speaks to the question that was raised by Councillor Oikel about local people being involved as, and I'm not sure what the term is that you use, but they're basically the watchdogs in the community. And I've had the pleasure of meeting one of those watchdogs in a hike I was on down on the Eastern Shore, and I got a tour of a place that I would never have found except for the generosity I received in being taken to one of these special places like Cape Lahave Island, and it was by one of the watchdogs. So if you can just speak to that so that people understand the role the community can play in maintaining the integrity of the intent of this agreement.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question, Meryl Smith. We have a program called our Property Guardian or Wilderness Property Guardian program, where we're able to connect people and communities to nature, and we get those really keen people who just love being in the woods, and we get to kind of connect them to these really special places in Nova Scotia that we've protected. And it also serves a really important stewardship activity for us. So they go out to the conservation lands. They let us know if they see any issues, if there was any garbage dumping, or if they see some really cool birds, and they report back to us. And we've been able to build some really really cool communities of folks who like to go out together. But again, it just is a way of us to build local communities, engage people who want to get out in nature, because Nature Trust lands are open for the public to enjoy in a low impact wilderness style use, as well as for the plants and animals that live there. So if you want to go on our website, we do have a link for signing up to be a property guardian. And we would love to have community members in the Cape LaHave area who are out, who have boats or kayaking and being out there to sign up or get in touch, so we can definitely bring you into as part of the community to take care of this special place.
Thank you for that. Our CAO has worked really hard, and I do want to acknowledge it, because there was a question raised and at several of the meetings that I attended around the legality of the municipality entering into this agreement, and how the province bestowed powers to the municipality and the history of that. He has dug into this, and he's just dying to make a comment tonight. So I really hope you'll all indulge him a little while he...
Thank you, Mayor. And to go even further, I brought in legal counsel to provide additional advice if it's required. So originally it was 6 pages long. I'm going to reduce it just because it's already 7:30. So the Crown Grant was issued in 1785 by King George to Joseph Purnett, Henry Vogler, Matthew Park, Joseph Whitford, George Greaser, and John Banker in trust. So this is the Cape LaHave Islands, in trust for the use and benefit of the inhabitants of the township of New Dublin as common lands. And there seemed to be some question put forward by a couple of individuals, and they weren't aggressive questions. They were just asking because they were interested to know what the legalities were of a Crown grant with trusts issued by the King, and the ability of the province to change those historically. So the journey begins in 1785, and I'm going to bring you to 2023.
Shortly.
So when you review the legislation, you can see that the terms of the original trust have been altered on a number of occasions over the last 240 years, which isn't surprising. We've also seen the growth of Nova Scotia with the responsible government in 1848, and then Confederation in 1867. And the BNA Act indicates that the provincial authority rests in property and civil rights. That's a provincial jurisdiction. And so when you go through the legislation, some of the changes that were implemented by first the House of Assembly and then the Legislative Assembly is in 1830 and 1831. The trust was amended by the province of Nova Scotia, or as it then was, which permitted the lieutenant governor to fill the vacancies in the trustee positions, because the original trust didn't have any provision to replace people as they died or became unable or unwilling to act as a trustee. Also required in 1831, also required the trustees to convene a public meeting. They permitted the adoption of regulations as the majority saw fit regarding the various uses of the property. They permitted the appointment of a keeper who would watch over the lands to make sure there were no breaches of the regulation. They permitted the appointment of a clerk who would take notes at the public meeting. And they set the wage of the clerk at 6 pence per 90 words.
You'd be rich.
For 90 words, yes. Encouraged writing. It also permitted the imposition of penalties for a breach of the regulations, including the ability of the keeper to impound and sell cattle that were on the land in breach of the terms. And so that lasted from 1830 to 1831 until 1897. And in 1897, the province divested and removed the powers of the trustees and placed the lands under the control and management of municipal council. And the legislation empowered municipal council to rent, lease, or sell any portion of the common lands under their control. So that authority lasted from 1897 until 1981. And in 1981, the province, in its wisdom, removed the power of municipal council to rent, lease, or sell any portion of the common lands. And so that led to the inability of municipal council to enter into a conservation easement. But to solve that, in 2023, the province amended the legislation, and the original legislation is called an Act Relating to the Common Lands at La Have in 1830 and 1831. And that was amended to provide specifically that municipal council can grant a conservation easement. So when the question is posed, how can you alter an original trust from 1785 to get to today with municipal council entering a conservation easement? From the municipality's perspective, the answer is simple. We can do it because the province said we can. They've changed the legislation to specifically permit municipal council to grant a conservation easement. The question of whether the province has the ability to alter that original grant is a subject that could be brought forward in judicial review on an application for a mandamus or certiorari to require the province to either undo something or do something. But there's time limits for doing that. And since these changes the majority of them occurred in the 1800s, it's well past any time to bring that challenge. But there is a generally accepted standard of law that says the Crown, which was originally King George, as it changed through responsible government and eventually to Confederation and the creation of the province and the provincial legislature and the authority of the province, they can do that. And it's not just this act, like it's not just the common lands at La Have. There's a number of pieces of legislation where common lands were issued by the king at that time in various parts of the province, and those pieces of legislation have been brought forward regularly and modernized so that it makes sense. JC, if you have anything to add, I'll invite you to come forward, but that's the answer to the question.
Not a lot.
JC also would get 6 pence for every 90 words.
Adjusted for inflation, that's several $100s an hour. No, the only thing I would add is a very practical point. And for those who haven't met at council yet, I'm J.C. Reddy. I'm the municipal solicitor. The only thing I would add is a practical point, and Tom alluded to it, that the municipality, you always have to remember that any municipality is a creature of statute by the province in and of itself, by virtue of the Municipal Government Act. So it's all well and good for folks to have academic discussions about, well, the Crown said this in 1800 whatever, or the Fed said this. We do what the province tells us to do. So we have a piece of provincial legislation where the province has told us to do something. We're subordinate to that. If somebody really wants to challenge the provincial legislation, there's the Supreme Court, there's a courthouse, they can go make an application. We've actually had it happen before. I'm dating myself in about 2007 or 8. The only one around this table who would remember that saga was Councillor Bell, and we were successful. So I don't really have anything else to add other than Tom and I have shared and forwarded and, bits and pieces of his dialogue were filled in by my notes. There's not really much to add to that. It's a situation where probably not everybody will be happy, but we're confident that as a municipality, we've taken the legally correct course.
Okay. Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Bell.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and MODL councillors, I move that Municipal Council approve the conservation easement agreement pertaining to the Cape La Have Island between the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and the Nova Scotia Nature Trust, as presented, on the condition that both MODL's solicitor and the staff agree with the baseline documentation report as defined in Article 5.3 of the conservation easement, and further authorize the mayor and municipal clerk to sign the agreement. I so move.
And a seconder for the motion, Councillor Reinhardt. Is there further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you to everyone who worked on this for many years. It is a great thing to have it protected in the way it is now. We'll move on to Administration 11.3, which is the proposed fire tax rates for 2025-2026.
Good evening, Council. You have the rates identified in your package. Just by way of quick review, fire departments make sure they have budget information available and go through ratepayer meetings. There's a range of legal structures in place incorporating them, but whether they are a society, whether they're incorporated by private members legislation or they're a commission, they register with the municipality in order to have us do the collection of the area rate. So annually, council approves these. You can see in your fire services coordinator's report that there are 4 departments that have changed their rates. One department has a reduction, which is Martins River, which I believe is as a result of them paying off debt for a large capital purchase. And then we have 3 departments who are seeking a small rate increase. So council does have to approve the rates, and we're looking for a motion to do so.
Would someone propose the motion, please? Councillor Moore.
To Mayor McLean Wall and members of council, I move that municipal council approve the fire tax rates per $100 of assessment for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2026 as presented.
And a seconder for the motion, seconded by Councillor Hubley. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on to Finance. Ms. Wenzel, tax exemption for Baker Settlement Hall.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. To the Mayor and members of Council, you have before you a late application for the Baker Settlement District Community Hall, who have applied for a tax exempt status. You do have a policy, Policy 12, which does provide for tax exempt status for community halls, who is, and this does qualify under that. This is only can be awarded at council's discretion. So the Baker Settlement and District Community Hall Association actually acquired this property in 2024 through, I think it's a fire hall that they acquired. And they, I don't think, realized that they would be having to pay property taxes. So a bill was issued when we got that change. They had some discussion with staff. February 28th was your deadline. It passed. So they have made application for last fiscal year as well as this fiscal year. So, this is at council's discretion. You can award it or not award it, but it is within your policy to do so, and it would have to be your direction in order for staff to be able to grant it.
Could we have the motion put on the floor? Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean Weil and members of council, I move the municipal council approve the tax exemption application from Baker Settlement and District Community Hall Association properties as presented, and I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Moore. Is there discussion or question on the motion? Councillor Hubley, and then Councillor Wickle.
Just a comment, the Baker Settlement and District Community Hall is a main staple in the area. The hall went through a lengthy process to transfer the ownership from Tri-District to MODL and finally back to the people of the community. The process wasn't completed at the deadline of February 28th, so hence the late application. And I'm asking for support around the table to approve this late application.
Thank you. Councillor Wickle.
This doesn't have to come back every year. This will be how it will go forward. Okay, great, wonderful.
Any other questions? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. We will move to reports from a number of people. Our MJSB update. Councillor
Thank you.
Whittle.
Yes, we had a special meeting on September the 2nd, 2025. The board accepted the resignation of the coup, Leslie McFarland, with the coup's last date being Friday, September the 26th, 2025. The board directed her to conduct an internal competition for an interim COO, and that is presently happening.
Deputy Mayor Vino.
Thank you. Well, we had our August break from our regular Tuesday meetings. There were still a few meetings held in August. One included our regional growth meeting with Town of Bridgewater, and looking forward to seeing that come through. But I wanted to use this time to talk about an event that took place this past weekend, and that was the 100th Annual Fishers Memorial Service, which was held this past Sunday on the Lunenburg waterfront. I attended this event alongside the mayor on behalf of council and residents of Modal. Wreaths in memory of lives lost are placed at the waterfront memorial, and many are carried out to sea in a ceremonial drop. Again this year, the Kennedy Sky, captained by Jeff Wagner and crew from Blue Rocks, took those wreaths out to sea. This service is dedicated to those who have gone down to the sea in ships and who have never returned, and in tribute to those who continue to occupy their business in great waters. As someone who comes from a family with many ties to the fishing community, this service hits home and is one of my favorite events to attend every year. And just a little history that I learned while I was there on Sunday. For centuries, ships have been referred to as she. Part of this comes from old traditions and languages where vessels were often personified as something alive and protective. Sailors would spend long stretches of time at sea, depending on their ship for safety, almost like a mother carrying her children. Calling a ship she was a way of showing respect and affection, acknowledging the vessel's strength, grace, and ability to carry them across dangerous waters. While modern practice is shifting towards calling ships it, the old custom of she remains a reminder of the deep bond sailors have always felt with the sea and their ships. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Although we have met as a council and have seen each other in several meetings since the 1st of September, I'd like to welcome everyone back. I do hope you found time to enjoy time with family, friends, and doing activities that bring you joy and relaxation. As I look ahead, we have a lot to do, and we will need to continue to push along if we hope to accomplish all that we set out for ourselves over the last year. We have an ambitious agenda and will need to continue to stay focused on getting the right information, having good discussions that lead to good decision making. I did meet with two staff members from the Ecology Action Center, Mark Butler and Nicholas Winkler, who were interested in learning about our experience with coastal protection regulations. And although I personally don't have a lot of experience with that yet, I conveyed to them our concerns about the absence of clear coordination between the province and the municipality on the issue of infilling on shorelines and waterways. We have an example of this that was brought to my attention by several people, including Councillor Bell, that now exists in Dayspring. One of the most unique activities that I've been invited to participate in since I've been mayor was building a dry stone wall in Cherry Hill. I have a lot of experience in picking rocks, but this was quite different as we pawed through the piles of stones looking for the right size, shape and dimension to add to the wall which borders the driveway into the Cherry Hill Cemetery. This is an amazing community project that brings professional stonemasons, dry stone wall builders, I didn't know there was such a thing, but there are, from out of the province to this area. It is a beautiful structure and reflects a tremendous community effort to carry out this work, which will extend over several years to get it completed. And Councillor Reinhardt was there too and put her stones in place, I think. The municipality provides financial structure for the organization to accept charitable donations. There was an evening of speakers talking about the geology of the area and how the rocks were formed along our coastline, together with people who work professionally using stone as their medium for house construction and landscape design. It was quite a weekend. I did attend the annual meeting of the Kingsburg Community Association, which is a very well-run, highly efficient community group representing about 125 residents of Kingsburg. It was when Councillor Brooks was away on his filming career. As I have mentioned in the past, they are working on a Fire Smart initiative along with a range of other activities, both seminars and social events to welcome new residents and create a sense of community in the area. As Deputy Mayor Vino mentioned, the Regional Growth Management Committee met and identified an outline of the information that will be presented next month in a meeting of the councils of the town of Bridgewater and our municipality. The objective is to create a better understanding of the extent of the projects currently underway within each jurisdiction, along with outlining the limitations and challenges associated with growth and development in each of our areas. This meeting is scheduled for October 15th. As Deputy Mayor Vino mentioned, we have been involved. There have been several services to recognize the lost fishers of our area, and one that I attended both, the one that she mentioned, and I won't go into the details of that. It was a lovely service, as she has said. But there was another one held on Bush Island, and in both cases to commemorate the hundreds of years of fishing here and the risks and losses associated with those many years of seafaring fishers and travelers. The stories I thought of as the names are read, you think of the families left behind, the stories of surviving women left to raise families alone when there was no social safety net. People relied on the generosity of family, neighbors, and communities who looked after each other. An incredibly beautiful sculpture was dedicated at the La Have Marine Museum after the service that was held on Bush Island. It was created by the talented Ivan Higgins from Liverpool. The statue captures a lone fisherman gazing off to sea surrounded by seagulls and fishing gear. And if you haven't gone to see it, you should. Again, a tribute to the community that raised $25,000 to have the sculpture created and placed at the museum. Several councillors and staff met with our MP, Jessica Fancy Landry, to discuss issues of concern to us, which include cell service inadequacies, infrastructure needs, including the need for funding to support the demolition of the center school, and the inadequacies of our current housing strategy to address rural communities, meaning the federal strategy to address rural communities. I met with our MLAs, both Susan Corkum-Greek and Becky Druin, to advocate for better cell service and to discuss the development of the New Germany School and our interest in working with the province and the community to reflect the needs of the community in a new facility, whenever that's going to be built. Recently, I met, and our Councillor Reinhardt and I met with residents regarding the inadequate road conditions around Artie's Pond at Vogler's Cove. There continues to be a group of community members representing residents, the fire department, and the local surfers who have raised concerns about the inadequacy of the road, the need for parking, and the preservation of the wetland more commonly referred to as Artie's Pond. And they do plan, anyway, we had a great meeting with them, but they are planning to have a community meeting to garner wider support for their concerns. I have given considerable thought to the Quality of Life report, which was tabled by our Parks and Recreation Director, Trudy Payne. Quality of life touches many aspects of the work we do at the municipal level. And since then, I have been thinking, as I said, thinking a lot about this, researching and looking at what other communities and other jurisdictions are doing related to quality of life. And there's lots to read, both in Canada and the United States. So I have put my thoughts together about this and have written a short paper, which I will distribute to you and to the key staff members, that will be looking at our strategic priority around quality of life as we begin further discussion on this later in the fall. And I just wanted to put my thoughts together in a way that might help all of us to think about quality of life and how it permeates all that we do in a number of areas, whether it be parks and recreation, economic development, our planning, our housing. All of this contributes to quality of life. And so we may have thought we slotted in one area. I see it spilling out into a much broader context of the work that we do. And I hope this will help you in your thinking about how we may most appropriately address it in our work ahead. That concludes my report. Sorry it was lengthy, but we haven't had a meeting for a while, so. We have reached the end of our meeting, and we need a motion to go in camera to deal with several items under Section 22 of the MGA. Moved by Councillor Burns, and we need a seconder for the motion. Deputy Mayor Vino. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. We will go in camera.